Hello, today we are working in Tahiti Hoop Woods, and what we are doing today is widening this ride here to allow more sunlight in, which will then create a more biodiverse habitat for lots of different species such as butterflies, bats and other insects that will benefit from the increase in sunlight that will happen as a result of us widening this ride. We are doing this by clearing vegetation and compassing, using tools such as axes, like my friend here, tools like bow saws, like this, and another tool called a bill hook, like this. What we are doing with all of this dead wood, we are keeping it in the area, which will then provide a dead wood habitat, which will benefit species like fungus and insects. What we are doing with it is we're taking it off the main path, so it doesn't create any sort of hazard for members of the public, and we are stacking it up down here. We're doing two things with the wood. Larger pieces of wood are being kept over here in this cord, and other pieces, the sort of more brush-like pieces, are just being stacked up behind the tree line. This will be a perfect area for the dead wood habitat. We have to bear in mind that this is a public space, so there are many health and safety issues. We have had to erect two signs either side of our workspace to warn members of the public that we are working, so no harm comes to them. And we also have to take care of our own health and safety by wearing steel toe caps, wearing gloves like these, and if we were felling tall trees we would be wearing hard hats, but that's not necessary for today. We are carrying this out at this time of year, sort of end of summer, so we're going into winter now, to minimise the effect we have on the wildlife. For example, there are no birds nesting this time of year, so we won't be disturbing their nests. Also, this time of year there are less tourists around, so we have less issues with the public. We have had a few problems doing this work, however. At the moment there is quite a very contagious spore spread tree disease known as Phytophthora, which is affecting these sweet chestnut trees here, and it's very contagious and we have to be very careful not to spread it. So what we are having to do is, when we finish our work here, to wash and disinfect our shoes so to not spread the spores to other areas of the woods. Today we are at Duchy College Rosewarne in the cottage garden, and we are coppicing willow, and we're doing it mainly with these pairs of loppers, although for some of the thicker branches we come across we'll be using a bow saw like this. The reason we are doing this is a conservation thing. We are clearing space so that we can plant lots of wildflowers, and this will increase the biodiversity of the area by making it more habitable for bumblebees and butterflies and other forms of wildlife. How I'm coppicing it is I am coppicing it at the ground level with these loppers, like I said, and it's very simple. I just take the loppers to the branch and snip. The branch comes right off, and what I get is this very flexible, green, thin, workable piece of willow. And this is very good because we can use this willow to construct saleable products, such as this garden hurdle here, although we can also construct baskets. And this is very important because we can sell these and generate an income for the college, which is very important because it gives us a means of continuing this conservation work. There are, however, a lot of environmental considerations we have to bear in mind for this practice, mainly the time of year that we're doing it. So today we're going into winter, and we're doing that because at this time of year there are no birds nesting, and overall there are very few animals that will be sort of breeding, reproducing at this time of year anyway, so we're not disturbing them. And also a lot of the vegetation at this time of year starts to die back anyway, so we're not cutting away lots of perfectly good green fresh vegetation. The PPE, the protective clothing we're wearing today, includes these steel toe cap boots, so if anything should fall on our feet, like the loppers or the bow saws. Gloves, which protect my hands from blisters when I'm handling the tools. And of course, this is technically a public place, so there may be people walking dogs, bringing their children for nature walks, so we're very aware of keeping these very sharp tools close to us so no one can hurt themselves on it. There are drawbacks, however, of doing this. Coppicing, even though it's very productive and we can make these lovely products, is very labour intensive, so it takes a lot of time. And the only way we can really improve on this, unfortunately, is to get in machinery, such as chainsaws, but that brings with it a whole range of other problems, like health and safety, costs, getting people with the right chainsaw licences, etc. But overall, this is a good thing that we're doing today. Hello, today we are at Dutchley College Rosewarne and we are pit planting native oak seedlings into this area here. And how we're doing it, we dig a little hole, this is what makes it, dig a little hole, and we take the seedling, which is only very recently been dug up, all the soil still around it, plant it into the hole so that it's at exactly the same height that we dig it up. We place the soil back in the ground, pack it in so there's no air holes in the soil. That's very important because otherwise the roots may dry out. And to stop the roots drying out also, we have a bucket of water with us just in case the ground was too dry, but today is damp so we don't need it. It's very important the seedling is buried at the right height. If it's buried too deep, it will rot and die. If it's buried not deep enough, the roots will dry out and the seedling will die. We're using a spade to do this, just a normal garden spade like this one here. However, we've also had to use this mattock. Some of the soil has rocks in it and we need to loosen the soil. The reason we're doing this is basically to improve the nature reserve, to give the oak seedlings the best chance of survival. We've removed them from another part of the reserve where they may get trampled on or where there's not enough sunlight, and brought them here, a nice open space that we recently cleared of non-native fallen trees. So there's lots of sunlight, lots of nice open bare ground to give them lots of space. We've planted the oak seedlings very far away from each other because one day they'll grow to be very big trees indeed. And that's about it really. We've got a lot of health and safety to consider. We're using tools, so we have to be mindful. We're using steel toe cap boots and working within a safe distance from each other so no one gets hurt from any tools. There are drawbacks to doing it, however. Of course, not 100% of the oak. A possible improvement on this would be to, instead of move the oak seedlings from one place to another, to actually grow seedlings off-site and bring them on-site to increase the number of oak trees here. Thank you. Today we're at Dutchley Rosewarne Nature Reserve and we're scattering seeds of native wildflowers to increase wildflowers. How we're doing this? We're going to ground that's mainly undisturbed. We're raking it up, unearthing it and scattering the seeds. Using undisturbed ground to minimise the chances of anything happening to the seeds. And we're also doing it at this time of year because it's plenty of time before spring, so we can be sure they got a good chance of springing up. How we're scattering the seeds, we're using a method known as broadcasting. We get a bucket, put some sand in the bucket and then put the seeds in the sand. We mix it up and that way we can scatter the seeds a lot more easier, like sort of scattering it out like this rather than having to just sprinkle it out, which would be a lot more time consuming. A particular flower we're going to be planting a lot of is yellow rattle, and what that does is it is parasitic towards, well, semi-parasitic towards grass, and what that does is lessens the amount of grass, which makes room for other wildflowers to spring up. There's not really many environmental considerations we need to do because it's a relatively benign thing we're doing, although we are making sure that the sand is non-toxic, so we're not actually, leaching out anything bad into the environment. And there aren't many ways we could be improving on it, apart from perhaps using machinery designed to scatter seeds, but that would be very expensive and we might as well just do it this sort of normal way. And other safety considerations would be, keeping a safe distance from filming now. I'll just edit out the first bit. Today we are at Tahiti Woods. We are very close to the visitor centre, which is the most popular bit for tourists and visitors. And we're taking out this old bridge and replacing it with a new one. We're taking out the old bridge because it's rotten. The handrail wasn't good enough, it was too low. And it was made from sort of low quality, soft, tannelised wood. We're going to replace it with a new bridge with bigger, better, sort of higher handrails, and we're going to be using a hardwood oak, which has got a natural tannin, so it's untreated, so it's better for the environment. We're taking out the old bridge by using tools like an iron bar, mattocks, hacksaws, hammers, and all sorts. Not using any hand tools, so we disturb the area as little as possible. And we're going to use just hammers and nails and other simple tools to put the new bridge in. For health and safety, we've erected some very clearly visible signs and barriers to keep the public away. And for ourselves, we're wearing steel toe cap boots, gloves, and just generally keeping a safe working distance from each other. So yeah, that's it. I mean, another thing we're doing as well to make it more accessible, which is the main reason for this, to make it accessible to visitors, is we're going to make sure this ground is level, so it's accessible to wheelchair users and buggies. And by keeping it accessible, it will benefit the park because it will attract more tourists. There are a few things we didn't consider. I mean, when we came to taking the bridge out, we found some concrete encasing, which made it very difficult. And we could have definitely improved this by trying to predict that, trying to prepare a bit more. And also bringing some power tools with us would have also been very helpful. It would have made it a lot easier. Yep, and that's it.
Okay, I'm sure you stop it, but...
Oh, okay. Don't know how you stop it. Oh, okay.